Vinny Perth is with us. Vinny, good morning to you.
Morning. How are we doing?
Good. We've been getting a lot of grief from our viewers and listeners for not doing enough on the League of Ireland, and no better time to do a proper deep dive on this. It's Rovers versus Derry, right? And we kind of expected this to be, top of the table already, 6 points, both teams on a run, but that's not the case.
No, it's been a real interesting start, and a difficult start for a lot of teams because of I suppose the huge influx of players from outside of the league, so it's taken people a little while to get going. This has been probably the first pre-season I've seen where teams have really struggled to find rhythm for different reasons. And I look at, actually, Sligo signed 10 players the last time I checked, and 7 of them were from outside of the league. So that's like 70%. And John Mann came back from St Johnstone, but he was a Sligo player. And I think Dundalk, all of their signings have been from outside the league. So it's taken teams a little bit of time to get up to rhythm. And then when we look at the big game, Shamrock Rovers in Derry, I was at the Derry Pats game. Derry hadn't found the rhythm spectacularly, but Ollie O'Neill came in from Fulham on loan late. He played. Patrick McElhenney was sort of injured. Michael Duffy was injured. So it's typical start to season stuff, but what's happened at Shamrock Rovers been really interesting. They 1-0 up in the first game. Pico Lopez sent off. 1-0 up against Rotterdam. I was at that one, probably should have been clear, and then the 2 centre halves got sent off. So that's really changed the sort of narrative around this game this weekend, because Rovers play same way for the last 5 years. Back three, almost 2 wing backs and a box in midfield. They're without 3 of their centre halves. Sean Horse seems to be injured. So what did he do?
You need that for your back three, yeah.
Yeah, so that's fascinating, and I'm sure Derry will be sort of trying to work out, looking for bits of information of what Rovers are going to do the weekend. So that will be fascinating to see how that pans out.
More red cards than points.
Yeah, it's been interesting because they've been. They've been a little bit unlucky. Some people have asked me, have they got a discipline? No,
if this was a French rugby team, we'd be like, typical. But it's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it is, because look, I think Lee Grace's tackle against Rotterdam when he's already got a yellow card is probably where his man just say to him, you can't make that tackle. Dan Cleary's a little bit unlucky, and Pico Lopez is unlucky the week before. It's just, I think Rovers keep 10 men or 11 men on the pitch in both games. I think they win both of them. They didn't, so it makes it for an interesting
bang of early season refereeing as well, where stuff that maybe a little bit later in the season you get away with, and they're like they were going to establish precedent here so that we can.
I think the only yellow card is, as I said, Dan Cleary's first yellow card for time wasting was a bit strange, but no, I think look, I think they were second yellows, and that's what happens.
Shamrock Rovers dropping points early in the season is good for the league. That's my contention here, because we expect them to go on a run at some point. They've got the best squad. There will be a distraction in Europe, however long that lasts, but we would expect them to still be ahead of everybody else, given where the club's evolution is. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think they're very clearly, in terms of squad wise, ahead of everybody else. I think people are expecting a title race with them and Derry in particular. And Derry have still a little bit to prove as well to be in a title race. I think when you look at most leagues, I feel it's one between the 10 and 5 games to go in the seasons, when it's really when the squeaky bum time kicks in. That's really the key to it. Sometimes it goes really deep. And last season Rovers had lost 5 games and drawn a lot more. So in context, for the few years previously that, like Dundalk winning leagues or Cork winning leagues, you might get away with 2, 3, not 5. So they need to be put under a little bit of pressure to test how good they are, that we all think they are.
Gap early in the season last year, and they just kind of kept everybody at arm's length. So those defeats were never felt like, now we're going to see something.
Yeah, and that's why we need a team to push them to, and great teams need to be pushed. I feel this is a great Rovers team. I would love them to be pushed, and it looks like Derry are the ones who are going to take the challenge to them, and we'll see. But as I said,
if you're Derry, what's your mindset heading into this game? Is it like try and crush Rovers and get a bit of a lead on them and build that up, or is it actually, you know what, it's early in the season, it doesn't really matter?
Well, Rory Higgins has been involved with Dundalk for a while, and we've had some great nights up in Tallaght Stadium, and where we had that success, probably wide areas. I remember Sean Gannon scoring from fullback, and for example, and they will know that. They will know how. They will have a way of beating Shamrock Rovers. Derry will test them. They've got Will Patching, Patrick McElhenney. Hopefully Michael Duffy is back, but they've got really players who've won leagues, players who've won big things. So they won't have a fear there. I would say Rovers will feel on paper a little bit weaker this weekend, and after winning the President's Cup, people will make out that's a friendly, but that's when you're involved in teams. I remember when we beat Cork in the President's Cup in 19, it was a real momentum builder for us, and it knocked them back for 6. So I think if they were to win in Tallaght on Friday after the President's Cup, I think that's setting a real statement of intent.
Declan Devine will be fairly happy with how things have gone for Bohs so far. Like, can they sustain a challenge? I'm not saying they're necessarily going to win the title, but so far so good. Yeah,
again, it's that word momentum people in sport use, and I think they've got a big weekend.
Ger loves that word.
Yeah, I know. I've heard him, but it's one of them. Like,
I believe in confidence for the record, right?
We can have a play on words, but momentum, confidence, but whatever it is, I think the difference with Bohs, and I would have spoken to Richie here a couple of weeks ago, where we felt he'd have a really good start, is there was a lot of noise around Bohs in terms of new manager middle of last season, but they're a very structured club. They have their business done early in a lot of the cases. That's different to other League of Ireland clubs. Appointment of Pat Fenlon, I think, is huge as well to help Declan Devine. I think you need that in the modern game in terms of what goes on now in clubs and so many different facets to it. But Bohs have added intensity into their play. They've added Adam MacDonald, Buckley's come into it, Jordan Flores, who's a scorer of great goals, and then you have the whole Dalymount factor and Bohs factor, where huge crowd, big games, and again they beat Dundalk today 2-1, and that's the point about, you look at Dundalk's players that have come in, a lot of them players playing in League 1, League 2, fringe players, haven't probably experienced a game like that of that intensity, and that's where Bohs have stolen the march on people. And they've got Shells on Friday. That's a big game. It's a big game for Duffer. You could do it a win, and then they've got a home game against Drogheda on Monday. So if they were to win both games this weekend, they'll certainly be off to a really good start. But they're probably short of winning the league title. But I don't think they'll be stuck if they're thereabouts come the next transfer window to put their hand in the pocket and improve the team. I think they'll push for a European spot now, and they'll be the ones that will chase. Pats and Bohs will probably chase Derry and Rovers into them sort of top 4 positions.
That is a big game feel to it. Like 850 Bohs away tickets, I think, sold out in no time, which is no surprise given the Bohs support in recent years. But you're having some big game feels very early in the season, which is great.
Yeah, it is. Like, I heard you speaking about chanting and different things the other day. Like, I was at Bristol City last Saturday, and it's flat. I was at Derry and Pats in the first game of the season, sat beside the Derry fans, and I'm telling you guys, it is brilliant, and it has captured the imagination of a lot of the public. Not everybody, we don't need everybody, but when you hear the Derry fans sing "The Town I Love," honestly, I don't even know the words, and I joined in. It is brilliant stuff. People have to experience this to realise how good it is, because there's a local and a community feel to it, and there's a bit of realism to it as well. And it's not, again, I go back to, I watched Everton and Chelsea, and I stood in the Gladys Street end, and it was first game of the season in the Premiership, so it wasn't like Everton are, now they're everybody's bad mood around the club. And I tell you, I enjoyed Derry and Pats more. I understand I was watching world-class players in the Premiership game, and I'm not trying to compare both. And I'm sure your YouTube listeners will probably have a go off me for that. But I mean, for experience-wise, Richmond Park was better than Goodison, honestly. And Goodison is a brilliant stadium generally.
I live very close to Tolka, and anytime there's a game on, you can tell, like, the sound carries, and it carries in a way that it doesn't really from Croker. With Croker, when there's a big score, there's like a surge of noise, and obviously they're very close to each other, but there is this kind of constant burble. We're like kind of in the back garden listening to this going, this is, it's drawing people in the locality in with the sounds. Now the team needs to
Yeah.
Do you know Shane's point about there's a big game feel off this? There's not a big game feel at the end of the season if the teams aren't doing well or if there isn't something to fight for. So Shelbourne could find themselves in the back foot in a relegation battle. It's not a relegation battle, right? They'll be grand, but Duffer needs to start seeing some results.
Yeah, I think they've won. I think I've seen a statistics like 5 and 22 or something like that. Like, so it's not been brilliant. Duffer's challenge has definitely been the resources of Shells aren't as good as the other Dublin clubs. So to sign those type of players is really difficult. He got blood out of a stone to a point last year in terms of what he'd done. I think he overachieved. I think he probably won't admit that because he'll want the team to push on and all of these things. But I thought at one stage I was debating in my head whether he was manager of the year. That's how good he done at stages last year.
Okay.
I think that's fair
interesting to hear. Like, because a lot of people will just look at the results and assume that the relative resources are fairly similar. I guess that's the whole point about Shells looking for investment, because that's the thing that's going to allow them to kick on to the next level.
Yeah, and I don't want to be disrespectful to the players there, but he's got some players there that he needed to get them to another level, and whether they like it or not, they were getting to that level because of Damien and Joey O'Brien and what they done on the training ground and the professionalism and the drive in the club. And he's got players to another level. Some of those players probably could have been not classed as first division players, but really good first division players doing really well for them, and so they've improved and they've kicked on. And I'd like to see Duffer get a bit of investment and a bit of backing from the club. I know it's difficult for them, but I'd love to see him with some better League of Ireland players and to test them to see can he take that club to the next level.
Okay, so you're a believer in the Duffer revolution then? Well,
you've got to win games as well, and he knows football better than anybody. He's seen people come and go in clubs. He's got to win games as well, and they could do with a big win. There's a bit of rivalry with Duffer in a couple of the Dublin clubs, and he's not afraid to, which is brilliant. We want to see passion from our managers.
It's total box office.
Yeah, and why not? It's great for the league.
Yeah,
big one for Dundalk. Like, there's all the talk around the whole city links and the takeover rumours, but it's in Pats at home in Oriel Park tomorrow night. Like that again is a big game. Given 1 point from 2 is not an ideal start for Dundalk.
Yeah, if Ger just doesn't listen for a second, it's about momentum, right, for teams, right? So if you look at Pats, okay, they started the season, they drew at Derry and they won the other day, not being overly convincing. Both, again, they're searching. They've played back 3, back 4, but going up to Oriel Park would be huge for them. 7 points in the first 3 games, and then the flip side of that, if Dundalk were to get a win, again, it's something to build on. So it's a really big game for both clubs, because Pats are perceived to have had a good start. So if Dundalk beat them on Friday, they're both on 4 points. So it's like there's a big feel to these games already in the season. And sometimes what happens in League of Ireland, to explain to you, Shane, is that you get huge momentum first half of the season, because it's that type of league where you can be 3, 4, 6, 2, 3 wins away from being in a European spot. The crowds will sort of tail off a little bit towards the end because you have nothing to play for a little bit. But so it's important for clubs to build on it, and a good early start is huge for them. And I think
if
it's a big game for Dundalk.
Their fans by winning this game that they're going to be in touching distance of a title challenge, then Inchicore will be full week in, week out. But if they were to lose this 5 weeks in, then it's harder for them to rally the troops and make Inchicore a fortress, and that kind of has this knock-on impact.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say to you is Inchicore, whatever Pats have done, Inchicore has been rocking for a while, to be fair, you know. So the example is Cork, for example, 6,000-7,000. It's a brilliant place to go to. It's great, right? It's really hostile. It's brilliant. You really enjoy it as an opposition. But if Cork going to struggle now this season, you might only find there's 1,500 there, 2,000 second half of the season, and it's more difficult for them.
Needless to say, the teams that do well at the start of a season are the teams that find a settled squad, and I know you've been touching on that with writing this week about Dundalk. Like, early in the season, you need to know your starting 11 fairly quickly. Stephen O'Donnell, that's a major issue for them at the moment if they can't settle on a team. Yeah,
Stephen's an outstanding coach, but he needs a hand. I mean, signing 3 or 4 players after the season starts is not helpful, for whatever reason, whoever's fault that is, whatever that is, and you can tell they're not necessarily as number one targets, because you wouldn't have left it so. Like, they're relying on the UK market for people who haven't got loan deals probably, or fallen out of favour at clubs. So it's not ideal, and it's not what they want, and it will affect the team. Dundalk deserve a little bit better. They deserve to be in a better place, and they need, whether that's the current owners putting their hands in the pocket, or they need investment, because for League of Ireland to grow, we need some real strength and depth, and Dundalk are one of them clubs. And to touch on it briefly, you look at the first division. Waterford and Galway, for example, are really. I'm not suggesting this, and it'll go against what people believe in, but League of Ireland sometimes need to manipulate the league to make it a little bit better. Both of them clubs should be Premier Division clubs. It would help us, usually.
As in, extend to 12 teams next season.
Yeah, and they did do it, and before, where they done it on criterias and different things, but we could probably do it them two clubs again. Full house in Waterford, RSE, you'd expect. Galway's brilliant ground, get good crowds when they're going well, so we could probably do it, adding them two teams in a little bit, and hopefully both of them get promoted.
I haven't heard anybody else say that so far. Is it doing the rounds? Is this?
Well, ideally what people would prefer is the likes of maybe someone like UCD to go back down to the first division, and Galway and Waterford replace someone else. That's ideally what people want to happen. That's a little bit disingenuous on UCD, because the amount of players they develop is frightening.
I mean, are we not really lucky that UCD are in the situation that they're in, that they can play and be competitive as they are in the Premier Division? Yeah,
it's a lazy comment people make about UCD. If you go back to the players that have been developed by UCD, it is far and away probably the best club for development players in the last 20, 30 years. You think of the great Theo Dunn, just recently passed away, but so many good players have been developed at that club, and developed in the right way with an education.
Well, I was going to say,
it is huge.
You know,
huge.
The whole thing about football is that it doesn't care about the footballers. It just uses the players up, wrings them dry, and then casts them aside.
Yeah,
that's not UCD's way. Like,
we've managed people in Dundalk that came through the UCD way, like someone like Dave McMillan, and he was a qualified architect when he arrives with you, but he's a different perspective then on the game, and he's more in tune with what's happening in life. He's easier, takes on information, and he's got a better understanding of what's needed to do in life, and he always has that in the background. Robbie Benson, another example of it. They're brilliant people to have in your club, because it rubs off on them. You'd often hear Robbie speaking to people about whether it was politics, whether it was about investments, whether it was about what you're going to do in a dressing room, and that's sort of having people like that around.
Yeah.
The other footballers who've come the other way, where it's just football, the hell with everything else, and it's a good balance. And UCD should never be, what they bring to League of Ireland football should never be undervalued.
Is there any possibility of there being a 12-team division next year? Is this like...
I don't think the Premier clubs
would agree to it,
and that's the problem, and I don't think they would. It's just that there is a huge, because the self-protection, if you think about it, there's 10 teams in the Premier Division, 4 will end up inevitably in Europe. That's 40% chance, so the top clubs will preserve themselves. And it just happens to be, this is a really strong first division. You've got Finn Harps, you've got Bray, obviously the top, Galway and Waterford expect to be the top two, but it's about, I suppose historically we didn't have enough teams that have a good structure around them. We're starting to get our act together now, so there is an argument for a 12-team league should be on the way.
Certainly worth talking about for sure. Just to go back to the point that we were making at the very start, this is this is the two best teams in the country, really. Derry against Rovers. That's what we expect to happen. Is there a possibility that Stephen Bradley revisits his entire core philosophical view on football and doesn't play three at the back this weekend?
I can't wait to find out. That's the key to it.
Because
that's why
Stephen Kenny changed from I'm a forward back man.
Yeah.
Generally, I know there was a few examples in history that you were able to cite for us. The away game in Europe, did you go three at the back?
No. Well, his first ever League One game was three at the back, but no. Look, maybe it depends on Sean Horde. Say if Sean Horde's available, one centre half, he could play Sean Gannon. Maybe Gary O'Neill has played centre half of midfielder. But they do talk a lot about our structure, our way of doing things, our belief in different things. I'm fascinated to see. I don't know. I don't live too far from the training ground. I'm tempted to go in and look at the bushes and have a little look this week.
You need a drone.
Yeah, drone.
Vinny Bielsa.
It will. This honestly, yeah, it's fascinating. It will be fascinating to see the starting 11 and the shape of them. If you think about it, if you play for 4 or 5 years of a back three, box midfield, and all of a sudden turn up with a back four, they never even do it in sort of League Cup games over the years or whatever. They normally bring in the kids and play that same way. So it will be fascinating to see. Are they good enough to do it? Yeah, they are. They're good enough to do it with a back four.
And look, it's been successful. It hasn't always won over the neutrals in terms of the quality or the enjoyment. Maybe the quality has been there, but it's like the easy on the eye kind of thing. And I don't know, maybe it's going to eventually lead to European success.
Right, so I have a Dundalk cap on when I say this, right? So this has a health warning to it, but I've equated it for sort of the neutral listener is that when you compare Liverpool and Man City, okay, they're two different styles of play. Liverpool, Trent Alexander, etc., fullbacks. That was the Dundalk way. Speed, power, Massey cross and Gannon scoring at the back post. You could see that happening, no problem. That's my way. That's the way I love playing football. I think that's, high intensity. Rovers a bit more Man City. It's a bit more pass, wait for someone to make a little error, slip someone in, and they don't have the same intensity in attack, I would say. Both are brilliant styles. It's about what you believe in. If you offered me a season ticket for Liverpool, I'd take that over Man City because I think there's more enjoyment. There's more likely to be a 3-2, a late goal here and there. But it doesn't mean the Man City or the Shamrock Rovers way isn't effective, because it's working clearly, and it's about what your beliefs is and what you like in football.
It's also a little bit about what the ceiling for it is, and whether or not the ceiling for the Liverpool way is to win the Champions League and the ceiling for the Manchester City way is not to win the Champions League. We shall see.
Yes, and the challenge, I would say, for Rovers is, I think in Europe sometimes to go and win games, that next stage, sometimes you need a little bit of pace in Europe where you get in behind somebody and make something happen. A lot of the European clubs will be content with you having the ball, and they'll wait to counter-attack you.
Yeah, there was somebody recently was making the point about was it Harry was it Potter and his style of play, that they didn't have the vast majority of possession at Swansea and Brighton, and so it was kind of a bit weird for him to embrace that style when actually you need to be fully in control, and that's why they were never performing at the level they should have been. So the XG at Chelsea is below where it should be, but it was at Brighton as well.
Yes.
Is that a coincidence?
No, that's a style of management.
Well, do you know what I mean? It's like so he's just had bad luck, and the bad luck follows him around, or else the stats aren't actually.
But if you compare the new manager of Brighton in terms of that very slight tactical change, won't go into it now, but they play two number sixes and they play about 10 yards apart from each other. Okay, and what's the idea behind that? They go side to side, they're not afraid. But the idea is to give a bit more freedom to the front four, and Brighton have become a little bit more exciting since the new guy's taken over. And it is about that little small tactical change in people's mindset. It's about what you like, what your preference is. Who knows what's right or wrong?
Scoring more goals than you're supposed to is good.
Well, if they score 4, I'll score 5. Well, that's my mindset, but that's not everyone's. They think, well, there's times you won't score 5.
But even the Potter thing of like, I don't know. I don't think it's a coincidence that the XG is not where they've underperformed their XG over such a now sustained period at two separate clubs. One last thing, we were talking about Evan Ferguson has to start, right?
Okay. Do I think he'll start? It's different. It depends on the next little while. I was only thinking about this last night, right? I'll answer this in a long-winded way for you.
Okay, go for it.
Gavin Bazuna didn't play last night, and he hasn't been that good. I hope he stays in, gets back into the Southampton team. Seamus Coleman, bit of a mare last night, taken off, but has been in really good form. Matt Doherty hasn't played. Alan Brown is playing right wing back for Preston. On the left, who are we going to play? Is it going to be Doherty? You look at our centre halves. Collins is not playing. O'Shea is. Omabama Dele's lost his position. Who else? Egan didn't play yesterday, but generally plays. He must have been injured.
I think he's suspended. They said the papers.
Our midfield three, you would imagine Josh Cullen playing week out. Knight is now back in the Derby team in midfield, which is good, central midfield. Malumbi's more or less playing. He scored, and then I think he picked up an injury, but he's more or less playing. You look at Evan Ferguson, Adam Ida is again playing, and he's very strong for him. I think it's between Adam Ida, who starts him, and Ferguson. And then it's probably going to be
Chigozek Benny or
no, Obafemi started for Burnley this week. So the next few weeks are crucial. That like Collins gets game times. Somebody, the lads in midfield get game time. Jeff Hendricks in and out, sort of does play for Reading, but being in and out a little bit. So I think at the moment momentum's with Ferguson. Should start. I would start him, but that's different. That's personal. But Adam Ida may start the game because I think the staff really like what he brings to the team.
Could he play with Ferguson, Ida and Ferguson?
No, I don't think we can play both. They can play together, of course, but I don't think we play both. We'll only have one, and it's probably Obafemi off.
Playing behind.
Playing behind, and you know, the Jason Knight, what Jamie McGrath done away in Portugal, that sort of midfielder who'll do a little bit of both, and that will be as attack-minded, I think, as we'll be.
Okay.
Throw Gavin Houlihan in against France, surely.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And if you think Gavin played with Cork, and then Cork obviously went through a bad spell, ended up at Waterford, Galway in between. I think he's a Galway lad, if I'm not mistaken. And then
maybe Kilkenny. Well, he started off like Kilkenny. I don't know if he's where he's originally.
And then went to Hartlepool, had a good, League Two, scored 20 goals, good few penalties, and now brilliant night for him. Brilliant night for, again, another League of Ireland player going for the UK, and what a horrendous result for Southampton. I'll tell you what. But it's
great for Bazunu.
It's great for him. McCarthy did do okay, Ger. That's the only problem in goal. Made a couple of good saves, but I hope he gets back into the team. But brilliant night. Great player. Really good League of Ireland player. Won a league with Cork, and it's really good to see one of our own doing something on it. What FA Cup is still now, or becoming a world stage again, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And for those teams, and they've made that level. I think they've beaten 5 teams from above them already. First team ever in history to do that. So, Vinny, enjoy the games this weekend. Thanks a million.
Yeah, look forward to it. And the odd time, listen, go to Talca Park as opposed to listen to the back garden.
Tickets hard to get. I want to bring the kids. That's the bit that we're just working up to. I have to bribe them. So,
look with that.
It's